Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kimberly Ellman. I am Manager of National Mentorship Programming at Best Friends Animal Society, and I want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedules. It is summer to join us today to participate in the Using Digital Communications to Engage Your Community webinar. We're going to speak with three of our Best Friends digital gurus today, and they're going to share their real-world experience and some content that your organization can use to leverage your digital communications and effectively increase both impact and life-saving. But before I introduce our three lovely panelists and we get started, as usual, we have a few housekeeping items. Number one, all of you are muted for this presentation portion of the webinar, so don't worry about accidentally unmuting yourselves. We cannot hear you. If you do have a question for our panelists, I'd ask you to type it in the question and answer box. Please note that we are the only ones who can see the Q&A box, but it will pop up. And if I see that you have a question, I will read it aloud so the entire audience can hear it. And then we will make sure that it is answered before we hang up today. We may pause a few times throughout the presentation to answer questions if they are relevant to the topic we're discussing at hand. And then we will try to take some additional questions at the end, time permitting. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded. So keep your eye out on the network partner website. We should have the recording posted in the next week or so. And at the very end of today's presentation, I will be posting a link in the chat to some wonderful resources around the content we are discussing today. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists. First, let's start with Kate Moore. She is the Director of Digital Engagement at Best Friends Animal Society. Thank you, Kate, and welcome. Next, we have Evan Parker. He's the Director of our Web Strategies at Best Friends. Hello, Evan. And last but absolutely not least, Emily Tolliver. She is the Manager of our Social Communities and Content at Best Friends. And I want to thank the three of you for taking time out of your schedules to lend your talent and your expertise to our audience. So let's go ahead and get started. I have quite a few questions to ask, and I'd like to kick off this webinar by first asking each of you a question around creating a more compelling digital experience. So Kate, I'm going to start with you. Share with the audience, how can digital work across all channels work to support both engagement and fundraising?
Thanks, Kimberly. I like to think about digital channels both on their own, so each of our different social media platforms, email, et cetera, but also how they all work together, and not just in the digital space, but also with our offline channels. You never know where supporters or donors will be following you, paying attention to your content. So you want to make sure that you're telling your stories in all the different places, using those channels to their best usages, whether it's for video, audio, storytelling, whatever it is. But we know from our own data that our digital channels play a really important stewardship role for our donors who give through the mail, for example. So even though we're not seeing them make their gifts online, we know that we're supporting that giving. So try to think about it as holistically as you can. Use your content in as many different ways as you can all across those channels, and really think about meeting your donors where they are and making sure they're getting both the engagement and stewardship content that they need, but also the fundraising content that they need.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Emily, when you are talking about managing your shelter's digital content, are there things that staff should be assigned to versus volunteers? How do you delineate what staff is doing to manage that content versus a volunteer?
Yeah, that is a great question. Thanks, Kimberly. My team at Best Friends, we utilize a pretty broad range of different types of folks, from interns to actual full-time staff. We have contractors and we have volunteers. So we kind of span the spectrum when it comes to the type of folks that we engage with. When it comes down to choosing which tasks I give to staff and which tasks I give to volunteers, a lot of it comes down to, one, the skills required for that type of position, but also two, what is going to be a really good user experience for our volunteers. We don't want to give our volunteers necessarily like all boring, not very engaging kind of work, because they won't stick with us, right? Like we want to make it as appealing as we possibly can. So when it comes to staff time, I put my staff and have them focus on their strengths. So for my staff, that has to do a lot with writing, a lot of storytelling. They are very creative minded. And so when it came time to kind of delineate who was going to be doing what, I wound up giving our moderation tasks. Those are very important on social media because social media is a two-way street of communication. As much as you are getting, you should be giving back. So we allowed volunteers to come on and be our voice on social media and thank people for engaging with us. And that really gives them a kind of a back row or behind the scenes, right? Like a view of the organization and what is happening. And they feel like they're just a part of it, just like the rest of the team. But it's saving that team time where, our staff, we don't need to use staff time to thank every single person when those same people could be writing really compelling stories that help us to raise more money, so on and so forth. I definitely think it's like a combination, a little bit of a give and take in terms of how you want to, pay people versus who can maybe fill in some roles for you that aren't as maybe time intensive.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And as someone who tends to consult with shelters on volunteer engagement, I appreciate that you are engaging your volunteers in helping to manage our social content. So thank you. Evan, what should you do, or as importantly, not do when you're using digital imagery?
Sure. I think three big things come to mind. I mean, number one, images should be bright. So blue skies, puffy white clouds, green grass. For people who've done, for instance, photography for adoption photos, the worst thing that you can do is put an animal in bad lighting in front of a concrete wall. Take that same animal to the park next door with blue skies and green grass and puffy white clouds, and all of a sudden the adoption rate goes through the roof. Clear imagery, you want people to be able to look at it, get it, feel it, right, have some sort of emotional response, and then move on quickly. So pictures of animals or architecture or things at weird angles where your sort of looks a little avant-garde, that's typically weird for the sake of being weird. It's actually not helpful. I think the last thing to keep in mind is happy, to be honest. We in my last 20 years, we've tried to avoid negativity, especially in photography, but also kind of generally involved or showing any type of suffering. We find that negativity suppresses response. There are certain people who just can't deal with it and they tune out from it. The success you get is pretty short-lived. The person donates to make the pain and suffering go away, and then the next time they see an ad or a post or something from you, if they're expecting negativity, they're going to start avoiding your content. And eventually, if they avoid it long enough, it can damage your brand. So I joke about a certain infomercial by a singer from the 1980s singing the Maker, and how the first couple of notes of that song, I immediately run for my remote control and change channel. I've actually donated to it, and then literally from that point on, whenever I heard the opening three notes of that song, I knew it was time to turn it off because I just couldn't handle it again. So I think the short answer is you want to show them the fairy tale outcome. You want to show them what the supporter wants to see happen in the end, and they'll be much more likely to convert with that sort of imagery.
Thank you. And I think I'm familiar with the commercial you were referencing. And you're right. I think we all in animal welfare are familiar with that. So keep it happy. I want to focus a little bit on revamping websites for more impact. And Evan, I'm going to stick with you since this is your subject matter expertise. So in setting up a website for impact, first of all, why is having a mission and a vision for your organization so important?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When we're actually thinking through our mission, we actually try and put our mission within the context of the supporter's mission. So we think about it as creating a case for support, as opposed to necessarily framing it as this is our mission, this is what we do. It turns out to be the same thing in the end, but the very first thing that we want to do is establish what the need in the world is that's trying to be solved. And that need isn't, we need $50,000 by midnight or this puppy's going to get it. That is that there are animals who need our help. It is independent of our organization. It needs to tap into sort of what do people wake up in the morning going, oh my God, I need to solve. And typically it's not, oh my God, Kate Moore needs 50,000 more donors or else the world is going to end. So what is that need that's in the world? Then obviously who benefits? All of us work in a space where we've got very charismatic animals that benefit, but that's only the direct benefits. We've also got indirect benefits. How do people benefit? How do communities benefit? And ultimately, that gives you a great suite of stories that you can tell that are compelling, because you're not just telling the stories of animals. Difficult to put a mic in front of an animal and get a story out of them. So what other stories are you able to tell around it? Then it's the supporter involvement. What can the supporter do? What is their role? How can they make a difference on the ground? And obviously, that's going to address the need we talked about, but it's also going to help the beneficiaries. And then what's the urgency? Why do we need them to do it right now? And that's not just the threat of, inaction means that animals are going to suffer, but also we've got an opportunity right now. What is that opportunity and why is it best if we act now? Then on top of that, then you've got the differentiators, and that's where you can kind of take all of that back and say, hey, we are an organization, we are you, we have shared values with you, you are our people, we are your people. And we talk a little bit about what makes us different and why we have this base of shared values. And then because it's essentially doing exactly what you're saying. We're laying out the mission, but we flipped it on its head. We've acknowledged that it's the person's mission. It's what they woke up in the morning wanting to do. And hey, we're really great. If you really want to do what you woke up in the morning wanting to do, we're the people who can help you with that. If you take a quick peek at the bestfriends.org homepage, it is actually, now that I've told you the dirty little secret, it is a remarkably iterative. At the top is the need, and then it's the stories of the people who are benefiting, and then underneath that it's what we want them to do, and underneath that it's the urgency, and then it's the differentiators. We take a very literal interpretation of that in the work that we do.
Okay, and can you just break down those best practices on the homepage in bullet points one more time, just so people are clear? Because it is a lot of information if you're not used to setting up your homepage.
Sure.
That way.
So we lead off with just a little bit of a mission statement for what the need is that is in the world that's trying to be resolved. We've got stories about the beneficiaries and how those people and animals together are benefiting from it. Then we have the supporter involvement. So what do we want them to do? We want them to come to the sanctuary. We want them to take action. We want them to donate, etc. Through the action stuff, we talk a little bit about what our urgency is and why we want people to act now. And then we also have several blocks on the homepage. Those are spaced out a little bit, but talking about the differentiators. What is our special sauce? What shared values do we have with these with our supporters, and how do their needs and our needs overlap into a kind of a joint combined mission?
Thank you. And so how do you go about creating an effective call to action for supporters? What's the best way to do that, in addition to the things you've said in terms of setting up the homepage?
Sure. I think the easiest one, there's actually social science on this, which I kind of love, but you may fall asleep during. A lot of the appeals that we have come down to like altruism, or more specifically universalism. It's like, I want to help people or pets in the world that I may never meet, and that makes me a wonderful human being. And you know what? That does make you a wonderful human being, and that sort of selfless approach is fantastic. We teach our kids to be selfless. All of the religions, major religions of the world, really focus on it. You know, America is founded on Puritan values, where I think selfishness was an impurity of man that set you on the raging sea of madness or something along that lines. And so it's really baked into our DNA, the notion of being selfless. The thing is, most of us make fairly selfish decisions. You know, we want to help animals, but we also want to help our friends and family. We want to be secure. We want to have communities that we enjoy living in and that our communities are secure. You know, we're fed in by what our ancestors did, what our culture does, what our religion does. And you know what? We also do things because we like feeling like we're the type of people who do things. So when we're crafting calls to action, it's not just creating an offer, for lack of a better term, based off of the, you know, we're going to save polar bears and the Arctic Ocean from melting ice flows. It's also that, you know, my family benefits when I have a pet in it, and my community is a better place in it when we have pets that are safe and secure and not homeless. So we'll put together an offer and an offer is basically, what are you asking from your supporters and what are you promising in return? And so we'll want to make sure all of our calls to action have that, but we also want to make sure that there's some room in there for sort of selfishness too, that it isn't, you just don't have to be Mother Teresa and perfectly virtuous, but that, you know, maybe some benefit is going to come out of me, come to me as well.
Excellent. Is it better, Evan, to have a landing page on your website versus having someone go straight to a donation form? How do you feel about that?
These are such good softball questions. So there's social science behind this too. If you talk to me long enough, I'll give you a social science about literally anything. There are two types of audiences really in the world. There's the qualified audience, and then there's an unqualified audience. The unqualified audience are the people who have not chosen to give to you yet. So maybe they saw an ad about adopting a pet, and they don't know your shelter organization, but you know they found you and they're curious about what you are. They have not decided to do anything, but they're curious. In that case, we can't go straight from handshake to marriage, right? We can't go, oh, you've heard our name, give us money, please. Oh my God, please. So what we want to do is we want to make the case for giving there or for support there. And that's exactly the 5 things we talked about earlier: need, beneficiaries, supporter involvement, urgencies, differentiators. So we'll create a landing page that has all of those items on it. You know, pages will differ. You know, some will be like 50% story about who benefits, and then 10% about what the need is, and then maybe 30% about involvement. And I have no idea if that added up to 100, but let's hope it did. But so it doesn't have to be like equal parts, but we'll want to make sure after they consume that landing page that they've got a really good understanding of our case. And so for this unqualified audience, having a landing page, incredibly important. If the audience is qualified though, meaning they've already decided, maybe they searched for donate to best friends, at that point, you really don't need to make a huge case for them. They've already decided. This is the point where Kate and I joke about getting out of their way. They've already decided, so let's just make it as easy for them as humanly possible. So that's when we'll put them direct to a form. But you'll notice actually, if you browse through our website a little bit, we often do both. We'll have like a big orange button that's donate today, and it will go straight to a donation form. And then maybe in little tiny letters underneath it would be like, have questions, not sure what you want to do. And then it will go to what is effectively we're using as a landing page that will also route them back to the donation form on the other side if they decide to donate at that point, once they become qualified.
Excellent. So I think our audience can see why you're the director of web strategies after answering those questions.
Because I talk a lot. Yes, that's a core requirement.
And you also know what you're talking about. So, all right. So let's say that a donor has made a donation via the website. Kate, what follow-up communications do you need to put in place with those donors once they've donated on your website?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key first thing is to make sure you have a way to communicate with them. So make sure through your form that you're gathering an opted-in email address, a phone number, text, get them to follow you on social, whatever it is. Having that, way to reach back out to them is so important. But there's a couple things I would touch on. One is saying thank you however you can. You can never say thank you enough times. So if you've run a big campaign, if you have, if they've just made a donation on your website, if you did a big push for a special medical case, whatever it is, make sure you're thanking them profusely. Spread that thank you widely. It's not a bad idea for people who didn't donate to you to see how grateful you are to the people who did. There's also a great opportunity for what I wrote down in my notes as surprise stewardship. So you don't have to have a reason to say thank you to your donors. Touching base with just a short video to say like, here's something that you made possible for us. They donated a year ago, but you can still show them, a great happy adoption story from a week ago. So reaching out to them whenever you have the chance to remind them about the impact that they're making will keep them coming back, keep them having those warm emotional responses that Evan was talking about. You want to keep those warm and fuzzies going as much as you can. And then the last piece I would say, and it has to do with saying thank you, but also just continuing that conversation with your donors, is keep giving them ways to stay involved. So yes, you want them to keep giving, but the more you can also get them volunteering, fostering, sharing on social media, talking about you, the deeper their affinity for your organization, the more they will continue to give and bring other people along with them. So those I think are like the key pieces. And again, however you do that, whether it's email, a welcome series, thank you emails, text message, through your social media content, through your website, use everything you can to show that gratitude as much as you can.
Thank you. And I love that idea of complete engagement, not just donations, and saying thank you. I don't think you can ever say thank you enough, particularly in today's world. So appreciate those answers, both Evan and Kate. Emily, it is your turn. We are going to talk about the ever popular social media and social content. And I want to focus on how to make meaningful content on any social channel. So a few questions for you. For those that maybe are just getting into social content development or thinking about it, I actually do work with some shelters that still don't use social media. What equipment and skills are needed to get started, first of all?
Absolutely. So kind of the great thing about social media is that you don't need a whole lot in order to get started. In fact, all you need is a phone. And honestly, you will have your best presence if you use social through your phone, because this is how most people consume their social media now. In fact, it's to the point now that when we're checking our graphics, like our Facebook cover photo or whatever it is, if it doesn't look great on desktop, but it looks wonderful on mobile, we don't actually care all that much, because most people are not going to our Facebook page. And you can think about that too, in the sense of when was the last time that you personally went to anyone's Facebook page, whether that was a nonprofit organization, whether that was a, for-profit, Forever 21, Gap, something like that. People just don't visit their social media pages very often. So really what you want to do is you need to start with Facebook. Facebook is your number one. It's the bread and butter of the nonprofit world still to date, even with all of its crazy drama going on. Facebook has the most comprehensive set of fundraising tools, and it's more than likely going to be where a large percentage of your donors are. So really just getting involved with those people straight on Facebook, creating a Facebook page, making sure that you're set up for Facebook fundraising tools and the Facebook donate button, which is very easy to do. Utilizing content that you capture on your phone, which is called user-generated content, is how you're going to have a very authentic presence on your social channel. I was trained as a photojournalist. And so to me, when I started working in animal welfare and in social media, I wanted to put all of our most beautiful photos of these, kittens that have fur and blue sparkling eyes and all of that type of content. But it turns out that if you want to have a really engaged social media following, that it's actually the photos that you take on your phone in all of their pixelated, blurry glory, that is going to perform the best for you. And the reason for that is that people connect with content that looks like they could have captured it themselves. So whether it's your mom or your Aunt Karen or whoever it is, that type of content. So meaning a fully vertical. So think about how your phone looks. You want it to be a full vertical experience for them. You want your content to take up as much of the screen as possible. And these feeds are vertical because they're built for these phones. So by really focusing on that type of content, which is ultimately the easiest type of content for you to get, your volunteers are getting it, your staff are getting it, your caregivers, they get some of our absolute best performing content. Sometimes it's something as simple as like a dog just licking someone's face and the dog doesn't stop. Licking. And after a while it becomes funny and that sort of thing. Like people can identify with that. So really just focus on having a phone. If it's better for you to use scheduling tools or what have you, there's lots of great softwares out there, Sprout Social, Later. A lot of them have nonprofit rates that are very affordable or even free. So utilizing some of those tools to schedule your content is very helpful as well. But at the end of the day, you can have a very successful presence on any social channel, just utilizing your phone and the animals that are right in front of you.
Amazing. I would have never thought my poor photography skills would have been successful on social media.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about posting. What is the frequency that you recommend in terms of posting on social media? And then you touched on this earlier, but let's just repeat for the audience about responding to every comment. So again, posting frequency, and should we respond to every comment?
Absolutely. So in terms of posting frequency, a lot of that is going to be dependent on your individual organization and the people that follow you. So at Best Friends, we have a bigger team than most folks do on their social media team. And that means that we can devote more time into various, aspects of the program. I'm sorry, I just totally blanked. Can you repeat the question for me?
Sure. I'm asking about posting frequency and then responding to every comment.
Thank you. I don't know why my
You're
brain
fine.
completely blanked on what I was talking about. But because we have that frequency, we are actually able to write more stories, which means that we have a higher post frequency than a lot of organizations might be able to accommodate. I would say if you can post on Facebook at least once a day, every day, it's just going to help keep your audience engaged over time. We post currently 3 times a day on Facebook, but that is again because we have the content, we have the staff time and the resources to be able to do that. So I would say focus on Facebook first, focus on getting one good piece of content a day, then expand maybe into Instagram, start with 1 piece of content a day. But in terms of the timing of those posts, really think through where the individuals in your community are at that time. So if it's traffic hour or if people are trying to put dinner on the table, maybe not the best time for your post to go out because people are, they're, not engaged and on their phones. But a lot of people, what do after dinner and their kids go to bed? They sit in front of the TV and they look at their phones. That's a really great time to message them. First thing when they get up in the morning, that can be a really great time to get people. You can kind of play around with what seems to work best for your audience. But in general, I would say start around an 11 a.m. or a 1 p.m. time. That's an easy time to get post content out because you're at the office and people tend to be engaged right around that lunchtime. So that's a great place to start. Now, in terms of responding to comments, I mentioned earlier, social media is a two-way street and people are going to respond and be more engaged if they feel heard and valued by your organization. It goes so far as sometimes people are so impressed that we have responded to their comment that they will screenshot that and then post that to their social channels. Like, look, this organization actually took the time to thank me for my donation or to ask me how I'm doing or to ask me for a photo of my pet. Something as simple as that. If somebody comments and they're like, oh, I just love this story, it looks just like my dog. Why not write to them and just say, I'd love to see a picture of your dog. And instantly they're like, you would. And then that gives them that huge positive moment, so that the next time, you know, they are faced with a donation ask or faced with something, they know that your organization took the time to care about them as an individual, and that increases that loyalty to your brand and to your organization. So I know Kate kind of mentioned it too, with that sort of like surprise and delight. We do that also with some of our Facebook commenters. You know, we'll have people that will comment in that their animal just passed away, or something like that, and we'll reach out to them and just send them a card, just from someone in our, you know, on our team, and anything like that. The surprise and delight factor of your taking the time to acknowledge them, their existence, the fact that they engage with your organization, it goes a little bit, goes a very long way. And I know that that can be really, really challenging when it comes to comments, and people can get feisty on Facebook. Well, any social channel, anytime you give a human being a keyboard, they'll get feisty. So in terms of that, I would say that that can be very difficult, especially in times of crisis. I have worked in a shelter before when that shelter accidentally euthanized the wrong animal. And that became like a huge PR nightmare. Stay transparent, really, you know, be honest with people, accept that, you know, this is a terrible moment, but it will pass. And don't engage with trolls. You never have to get in a fight with people on social media. You can usually tell if someone's mind can be changed, but if they're coming at you and they're like, you're the worst, I can't believe you would do that, don't waste your time on those people, because they're not the one. They've already made up their minds. Don't worry about that. Don't get in a fight, but do engage with people, because you never know. You may turn that situation into, you know, a positive interaction where somebody understands what happened and they want to engage with you. They want to help and make it better. You know, it's important that, you know, people do remember that sheltering is a community issue. You know, it's not shelter workers that are just gung-ho about having to, you know, kill an animal. It's a community issue, and really showing them that they're a part of this community, the shelter workers are a part of that community. It all comes back together because it's social media.
Absolutely. And you dovetailed perfectly into my question about dealing with negativity on social platforms, not engaging, being transparent, but not engaging the trolls. Any other advice on negativity? I think, unfortunately, for all of us in animal welfare, best friends included, we've had to, your team, Emily, has had to deal with negativity, as probably everybody else on this call today. So any other advice for dealing with that?
Take a deep breath. It's not personal. It doesn't have anything to do with you. Check your emotions, because you are a representative of the organization, but you yourself are not the organization. Those people are not attacking you. They are just concerned citizens for one reason or another. And just really focus on that transparency, on being authentic with those people, telling them how hard this is, tell them how much of a, you know, whatever it is, just really try and connect with them. In general, people are not out to get you. They do want to help. They just don't know how. So just remaining positive, knowing that it's not a personal attack to you, can really go a long way towards not getting defensive or combative with people, because again, you're just a representative of the organization. You are not the organization itself.
Excellent advice. My last question on social content. What do you think is most important when it comes to maintaining a thriving presence on mainstream social media? So you've mentioned Facebook is the first and foremost place to start, but I would include Instagram and TikTok here. How do you maintain that thriving presence?
Yeah. So right now, the big thing is TikTok and Instagram Reels are the only two channels that are going to introduce you to new audiences. So it can be very frustrating when you're on Facebook, because, so for example, Best Friends has 1.4 million followers on Facebook. Our average post only goes to 50,000. That's a stark difference in terms of reach. And that's very, very, very frustrating as a nonprofit. For, you know, we're just trying to save these animals' lives. We're not trying to sell clothes or shoes or, you know, whatever it is. So it's really important to, you know, really stay focused on that, and using user-generated content. I know I already touched on that. Is just so important. Like, I really cannot tell you how how critical it is that you really adapt and accept it. Because whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on TikTok, that is how audiences are connecting with you. So if you do decide to expand past Facebook and you do go into Instagram Reels or into TikTok, really capturing that content on your phone, participating with people where they are at, and engaging in those really meaningful conversations is how you're going to develop that brand affinity. But I think the reason that I really try and knock it home about user-generated content really comes down to, if you're going to make any type of a purchase, no matter what it is, whether it's a donation, whether it's buying something on Amazon, you always look at the reviews. We always look at the reviews. We want to see what other people's experiences were with, whatever that is, whether it's a vacuum cleaner that they got on Amazon, and you want to make sure that like it actually has the features and that it actually works for longer than 1 second. You can use that same mentality in the social content that you create. So by taking, say, a caregiver's story and their interactions with an animal, you can create a really compelling story that's an authentic, it's a real story of a real human being's experience. People will latch onto that very, very strongly. So just whatever you can do to make your content feel very approachable. In fact, our team has been talking about it all morning about how we make our content more approachable. They say to write in the voice of like a third grader. Don't try and use big words. Don't try and complicate things. The more simplistic the message, the better. It all kind of feeds together into like one strategy. So just keep it clear, keep it simple and authentic, and you'll be fine.
Any other advice on measuring effectiveness of the content on social channels?
So engagement is key. If you have an unengaged audience, they're not going to do anything for you. And when I say engagement, I am talking about likes, shares, and comments. We're not as caught up in the reactions. So that's like the heart, the smiley face, the unhappy face, the angry face, like that sort of thing on Facebook. We're not super worried about that. That's a very superficial type of metric to track. We want to see people having an actual conversation, whether they tell us how much that content meant to them, whether they're asking a question, whether they're stating their own opinion. Anytime you can get them engaged, Facebook takes that, and they, not only does Facebook value a comment, Facebook values the length of the comment. So if you take time to give a really, well thought out answer, Facebook sees that and will promote that up and makes your content even more valuable to different people. So really tracking that engagement, making sure that you're encouraging people to stop in the feed, be disruptive. You want your content to make them stop scrolling. So like if they're looking at food their aunt had and pictures of their cousin's baby and like whatever it is, you want your photo to get them to stop dead and look at it and read and engage with it. So just try and think about that. Is this content captivating enough that if I were scrolling, I would stop? So like if it's a picture of a dog and the dog is happy, like Evan was talking about earlier with these puffy smiley clouds and stuff, you're more likely to want to stop because you're like, oh, look at that cute puppy. Whereas if that's a puppy that's behind a cage and there's poop in the background, you're like, oh God, and you just keep scrolling. It happens all the time. So be disruptive and then really focus on content that is either going to drive a conversation or that is going to get someone to share that content with their friends and family. Those are your two most valuable actions that can be taken on that post.
Thank you. Sage advice. I learned a lot about social media today. I appreciate it. Kate, I want to focus on our next topic is fundraising via a multi-channel campaign. So share with us the best way to go about doing that. How do you plan for a multi-channel fundraising campaign?
Yeah, and so much of what Evan and Emily just touched on is key to this as well, like thinking about how you present your case on your website, thinking about the content you're sharing on social media. Those are all going to support your fundraising efforts. So similar to what I mentioned earlier, you want to think about all your different channels and what the best usage is of them. How can you best tell your story, share your content, again, on social, it might be video, in email, it might be sort of a longer form story, key visuals. You want to make it easy for people to give wherever they find you. So again, like you'll have your sort of core email audience, likely. Email is a very strong fundraising tool. A lot of those people will be ready to give when you ask them. On social, you may have to do a little bit more of the storytelling because that's what people are going to respond to, get those emotions flowing, et cetera. And then, hopefully you are set up for Facebook Donate, raising money on those channels. Use those tools so that you're not trying to get them to move away from those channels to make a gift, because you're going to lose folks that way. On your website, make it really easy for people to get to the donate button. Make it easy for someone if they saw an email, they saved it for later, then they went to search and they came to your website. Are you going to be reminding them about the thing that they saw that they were moved by, and making it easier, easy for them to sort of pick up that train of thought again? So think about those like user journeys and how people are getting to you. You can also do multi-channel, not just in digital, but also through your, if you have a mail program, you can do the same sort of storytelling in that space as well. Around our really big fundraising campaigns, especially at the end of the year and the holiday season, like, can you get folks in your, adoption center talking about it? Can you have signage that makes it really easy for them to give? Like, just think about all the ways in which you interact with people and how you can, lean into whatever the story is that you're trying to tell and trying to fundraise around. And then what was I going to say? Oh, also, like, people need the visual reminders as well. So like, try to keep your imagery consistent. If you sort of have like a key image you're using for a campaign, use it or some variation of it in as many places as you can. If you're telling the story of Racco, who's a dog we have been talking about lately, like, tell his story in different ways and different channels. Like, some people, we all, always think about like different people's like learning preferences. So like, some people really will pick up your story more through video, some people through reading, some people through just imagery. So try to come at it from all the angles you can, and make it easy.
Thank you. Share with us what a campaign brief is and why shelters should use one.
Yeah, so a campaign brief is essentially a document that outlines all the things about your campaign. And there's a couple key reasons to use it. One is that it can help you stay efficient and focused in your campaign. So we'd like to use our campaign brief to address some key questions about a campaign that help keep you from veering off into, tangential areas. So, you need to answer some key questions like, what is your goal, both in terms of, fundraising, but also in terms of, what your goal is around your messaging. Who is your audience that you're targeting, and what do they, what do you know about them, about where they are and who they are and what they want to know? What are the key metrics you're going to track? Like, try to answer those questions when you are thinking about like the fun parts of the campaign, which is again, like video, imagery, storytelling, that you're staying really focused on where you're going with that. So that can be a sort of a template, a guide for how you answer those questions. The second key reason to use a campaign brief is that it just helps everyone be on the same page. So the bigger your campaigns get, the more people who are involved, the easier it is to sort of lose track of what everyone's doing. So having a centralized place where you have all the details in the campaign, all your sort of primary assets for your campaign, everything like that is really helpful and helps you work more efficiently. And then the last key piece is documentation. So we do the same campaigns year after year a lot of the times. And I strongly suggest that instead of coming up with new campaigns all the time, that you take what has worked, you tweak it, you make some small adjustments, you learn each time you do it. So you're iterating and not just restarting every single time. So then the next time you go to do your next campaign or the same campaign the next year, you've got this really nice historical documentation for everything you did. When your campaign wraps up, you should connect it to your reporting. So then you can see like how things performed, what were the things that we wanted to change. And you're just, again, working sort of smarter, not harder, as far as getting your campaigns out the door every single time. So it's really like a tool to help you stay focused in your campaigns, stay efficient, and work more smoothly as a team together.
Awesome. So you had just mentioned kind of tying it together to performance. So let's wrap up with talking about ways to track your fundraising campaign data and analyzing those results. What suggestions do you have?
Yeah, so I want to touch on why first.
Okay.
And it's really important to think about what you're trying to get out of tracking, because otherwise tracking, you can track everything and then you'll have too much data, or, you know, not track the right thing. So I do like to take that step as part of your campaign planning to think about what it is that you're going to track. So you're set up for success in that area. But the main reasons that you really want to think about tracking performance is that you will never really understand if you are improving over time. So if you don't have anything to compare to, you won't know if your next campaign does better or worse. You won't know who responded to what, or did this channel actually work well as a fundraising channel for us? Is it worth our time and our resources to focus on this area? So having the data is really key to how you're going to focus your energies, which is a, you know, very important thing to be thinking about. But it also can help you, you know, again, like track campaign to campaign. It helps you track year over year. It helps you find where to focus, like your, not just your energies and your resources, but also like audiences. So who is really responding to what? Can you start to get more sophisticated in your segmentation? You know, what, you know, are these people responding to dog messaging and these people are responding to cat messaging? How can you use that data to really, again, be more effective and efficient, which is apparently my theme today. Whatever tools you're using, and we could have a whole nother webinar about tools, you should have some built-in, you know, tracking mechanisms. So email is, of course, a huge fundraising channel. Most email tools have email reporting built in. So just to touch quickly on, you know, some of your key metrics, like you certainly want to look at, you know, open rates, click rates. You want to look at response rates. So how many people are actually giving out of the people that you sent your email to. On social media, you want to track all the metrics Emily mentioned, but also if you're fundraising on social media, like, you know, what are those numbers looking like? Numbers of donors and, you know, the total revenue raised as well. Through your website, you want to be tracking clicks, and hopefully you have something like Google Analytics set up, which is, you know, a great tool for organizations of all sizes, and be tracking, you know, the pathways through there and the revenue that's coming in that way. The last thing I want to mention on, you know, reporting is using benchmarks. So I'm sure folks know that there's a lot of nonprofit benchmarking out there. But once you're tracking regularly, you want to be not only comparing yourself to yourself, which is very important, but you also want to be comparing to what's out there and what other organizations are seeing. So there's a great tool called M&R benchmarks. Kimberly, I'll give you the link so we can get out to folks afterwards. But you can look in there. They have benchmarking metrics for just animal welfare organizations, small, medium, and large organizations. You can find the right, you know, comparison point for your organization. But that's how you're going to see if you're really tracking along with what other folks are seeing, or if you're doing way better, if you have some areas to improve, and then you can really, again, focus those efforts to, again, be more efficient and effective over time.
And you said M&R benchmarks to help track. M&R as in the initials, M as in Mary,
Yeah,
R as in...
the website is mrbenchmarks.com.
mrbenchmarks.com. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Just wanted to clarify. I do have one additional question for the panelists. Any additional advice for those wanting to improve digital reach? Anything we haven't covered that you guys feel is paramount to say before I open it up to see if the audience has questions and post some resources? And then I want to talk about some things going on at our upcoming national conference. But any final advice for those wanting to improve their digital reach? Evan, do you have anything?
We were talking about this a little bit this morning, but I think a lot of organizations are really good at targeting their enthusiasts, the people who already do what they do. And, you know, you can show a picture of a puppy to somebody who's donated to you before, and they're going to donate to you again. That's great. If you go through the more formal process of what we were talking about, like, you know, putting together a case, you know, what is the need, who's the benefits, one of the ramifications of that is it's not just the people who have given to you before will see that and find it compelling. But if somebody shares that type of content on social, if someone sees something that you've done that and passes it along to their friends and family, at this point, if it was just a picture of a puppy, then maybe they don't know what to do. They don't know who your organization is. But if you've gone through the effort to do that case, then you're no longer targeting enthusiasts, you're targeting the general public, right? You're targeting the friends of enthusiasts. And so it can live on with, because it's got that sort of additional context. So I think that's one thing, one very easy thing to do is, as you're putting things together, put you in the mind of somebody who has never seen or met your organization before. Do they have enough context to find what you want, to find what you're talking about as compelling? And if so, great. And if not, then think through those 5 parts of a case and try and work them in some quick way to the content that you're getting ready to prepare.
Excellent point. Emily, Kate, would you like to add anything as final thoughts?
I will add, I think something that's so important, and I'm not sure if it was Kate or Evan that touched on this, but it really goes, no matter what, is really start thinking about what the user wants to see. So what your donor wants to see, what your supporters want to see, and not just what you want them to see or what you so it really comes down to, like, if you need volunteers, it's very easy to just be like, hey, everybody, we need volunteers. And then 5 minutes later, hey, we need donations. And oh yeah, we need wet cat food. I mean, we have a lot of needs as an animal welfare organization. And the user doesn't exist just to meet your needs. They don't go on Facebook to find out what your organization is up to today. They go on Facebook to see what their friends and family are up to, and then as a bonus, get to find out what you are up to as well. So you really have to pivot into delivering that. And if you do have an ask, you need to have those asks be a small percentage of the actual content that you are putting out there, because what they want to see is the cute puppies and kitties. They are the people who wish that they could quit their job to have your job. That's the kind of people who are viewing your content. And so if you're pivoting to that and you're providing them that experience of, say, a video of one of your caregivers just being mauled by puppies and just covered in them, and it's like, dream job, anybody? That type of content will perform because that's what your audience wants to see. They want to quit their jobs and come be smothered in puppies all day. Whereas if you're just constantly saying, hey, we need this, hey, we need that, did you know that this animal needs help too, and so does this one, and then it's all sad, it's all dark, it's all asks, people will become disengaged because they are not getting value from your content. So it has to be value for them, and then occasionally value for you too, but mostly value for them, because otherwise they'll abandon you.
Very good point.
And I would actually, just to jump on that, that makes me think too, that you just never know what content is going to inspire someone to give. So if we're thinking specifically about fundraising, we actually want to maybe ask not a ton, but rely on your content and your storytelling, and then just make it easy to give. So in social, we can push out all these great heartwarming stories, video, etc. Those things don't have to ask for money, but if you've made it really easy for them to then click a donate button, get really easily to, however it is, to get to your website to give, whatever it is, that's how you're going to get people to give to you. Because campaigns do a lot of work, but they don't do all the work. Like, rely on that content, rely on showing the work that you're doing, and people will give if you make it easy.
Like the easy button.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for all of that wonderful advice. I am going to post a link right now in the chat. And if you will copy that link, you will see that we have a ton of really good e-learning content and playbooks around all of the topics that our 3 wonderful panelists spoke about today, and then even some more around fundraising and finance, in addition to what we've talked about today. I do want to give the audience a couple minutes to see if we have any questions, but while we're waiting, Kate, we have the Best Friends National Conference coming up in Raleigh, North Carolina, July 7th through the 9th. And I believe we're doing a workshop on fundraising and then a couple of speaker presentations. Would you like to tell our audience more about those specifics, please?
Yeah, there is a deep dive day, which is the day before the regular conference starts. And we will have a full day session on fundraising. So there'll be a morning piece of that talks about annual giving. And then we'll have several panels in the afternoon talking about, more development topics, corporate partners, et cetera. So if you're able to join us for that, that would be awesome. And then Emily and I are doing 2 sessions during the general conference. A digital marketing and fundraising 101, so really designed for beginners, and then a digital marketing and fundraising 201, which will take things up another notch to an intermediate level. So I think those are both in the same day. I don't remember what day, but if you're coming, check it out. And we, as you can guess, have lots more that we can talk about. So we will go into much more depth than we were able to today, and touch on, all things digital.
Excellent, thank you. We do have a question about campaign briefs. Someone is asking if there's a template we would be able to share. Kate, would you have a template that if you sent it to me, I would be able to send it out to anyone that was interested?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take what we use and put it into a template that we can share out.
Excellent. Okay, so Terry, since you asked that question, and for anybody else that's interested, I'm putting an email address in the chat right now. If you will email me at team2025@bestfriends.org, and I'll repeat that, team2025@bestfriends.org, I will be happy to share that campaign brief template with you. And again, definitely check out the resources that I linked in the chat. We'll give it just another minute to see if anybody has any additional questions. But I hear we are getting a good response for our fundraising deep dive workshop. So that's wonderful. And Emily's lectures are always well attended, as are yours, Kate. So, all right, well, if you have any questions, I'm going to give it about 1 more minute. And if not, then we will let everybody get back to their very busy summer days. We do have one more that's just popped up. Let's see what that is. Someone is asking if the conference deep dive on fundraising is virtual, Kate. Can you answer that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I need to follow up on that.
Okay. Claudia, if you will email me at team2025, I can get an answer for you on that. Again, team2025@bestfriends.org. We also have a question, Emily, on TikTok. I'm going to read this aloud for the audience. In terms of TikTok and IG Reels, see, you can tell this is not my area. I don't even know it. Instagram, I'm thinking it's Instagram Reels. In terms of TikTok and Instagram Reels, what kind of content is received best in your experience, Emily?
Yeah, so I would say start with what is easiest for you. That tends to probably be like really cute clip kind of content. So example of content that performed really, really well for us was something as simple as it was a baby pool that had been filled with those rainbow ball pit balls like that kids will play with, and it was just a dog that was running and jumped into the ball pit and like did a circle and then ran off. Something as simple as that, where it's a really cute moment, is very powerful. If you have someone on your staff, if you have a volunteer who has a teenager who uses TikTok, anyone can help you start putting together TikToks. And transformation videos do really well, but again, that starts getting into needing a little bit more experience with those apps. If you are new to TikTok and you aren't 100% sure anything about that channel, I highly, highly, highly recommend just downloading it and starting to consume content on the platform. Literally, all you have to do is download it and open it, and you'll start consuming content. And you can kind of get the feel for the types of videos that people are posting. A lot of TikTok is based around trending audio too. That can be something very simple, a way to get in on. There was a trending audio in the last year that was, tell me that you have a dog without telling me you have a dog. And then it's literally just hilarious stories of people, and their dog is, it's a video of them, but their dog is like screaming in the next room, something like that. And then they turn and there's the dog just sitting on the floor, just like having a cow. So it really kind of depends on the type of content that you have, but I would say short form is key. Really, with TikTok, you have about 1 second to capture somebody's interest. So don't come onto your video and it takes a second to like get your bearings. Start with the meat of the clip. So like if your story is about a dog that only has 3 legs, make sure that people in the very first frame can see that that dog only has 3 legs, because you don't have as long to engage with people. And know that the sweet spot for TikTok is a video that's about 10 to 15 seconds long. You can post videos now up to 10 minutes. That doesn't mean that you should. You really want to focus on that short form content. I would start with just really cute moments, cute clips. Even your foster parents may have some really cute clips. You know, if you've got bottle babies, foster parents with bottle babies, have them just show, you know, some bottle baby kittens. You know, it doesn't have to be really complex. You don't have to have a lot of pomp and circumstance around it. You know, it can literally be just a 15-second video and you just upload it as is. Just try, see what works for your organization, see what people respond to. And you'll be able to pick things up, and also follow other organizations. So don't just follow Best Friends, follow a lot of our other partners. For example, there's a shelter in Texas, Paws of Central Texas. They have like 20,000 followers on Facebook, maybe like 3,000 followers on Instagram, and they are like no killing it on TikTok. They have almost 100,000 followers on that platform. And it's just because somebody on their staff was like, hey, would you care if I tried this? And they went viral. So, I mean, it really can pay off, even if you just can let up a little bit of control to let a volunteer do it, or let a staffer's, you know, kid take a crack at it, or whatever it takes to have a presence on that channel. Just give it a shot, see how it goes, and see what your audience responds to. You might be surprised.
Thank you, Emily. We have one last question I'll take on social media, and it's around response time. They want to know if people stay engaged if you respond a day later. And that'll be our last question.
Sure. So I respond to comments as long as they feel relevant. A day is still a very relevant amount of time to be interacting with people. If it's been like enough time that it's kind of like an awkward thing. So think about like texting your friends back. If your friend texted you like a week and a half ago and you didn't say anything, might not be the greatest experience. If somebody messaged you like 3 months ago, don't respond to them. Don't worry about that. Try and be as quick and like as immediate as you possibly can. But definitely, if it's within a week, I would just go ahead and handle it. People expect us as best friends to be on social media every moment of every day, but in general, your community members are not going to expect that of you. They're probably going to expect that you would answer them once a day. It's sort of like an email type thing. So I think once a day is totally fine.
Okay, we do have one more question, and then I am going to cut it off. So if you have a question after this one, please email me at team2025@bestfriends.org. I'll make sure our panelists get your question. Same thing, if you want the template on the campaign brief, email me there. I'll make sure you get a copy. The question is it okay to infuse those direct asks for help throughout a social media campaign? Say 1 out of 10 of your posts.
Absolutely. That's pretty much how we have traditionally done it here at Best Friends. We will pick our most compelling stories. So, for example, during COVID, we had some COVID related stories, things that are really going to really grab the attention of the user. That's where I would put your money. So if you have 2 really compelling stories, do a Facebook fundraiser, absolutely, but make sure those compelling stories have the donate button on them, because those are where you're probably going to make the most money. And then, yeah, just like you said, infuse it every now and then. So maybe if you post 2 times a day, one of those posts is an ask. And then say through your campaign, let's say your campaign is a week or 2 weeks long, go heavy for a while and then ease up and don't do any donation asks for a while. That's in fact what we do at Best Friends. We pick and choose when we're going to talk about content, and the rest of the time it's just stewardship. We're just spreading the word about the work that we are doing. Because social media is great in the sense that like we can just stay fresh in people's minds, but also if an email goes out, they may not respond to that email, but then they're reminded by that social media post, or, they may be interacting with you in some other way. Maybe they're a volunteer and they don't want to donate right now, but they will definitely tell people about that adoptable animal that you posted. It's really just kind of mixing up that messaging so that people don't feel overburdened by all of the asks and are still getting all of that great, storytelling content about the wonderful work that your organization's doing.
Thank you. All right. Again, if you have additional questions or want a copy of the campaign brief, you can reach me at team2025@bestfriends.org. I want to thank all three of our panelists for their time. Evan, Kate, Emily, wonderful answers, wonderful content. Clearly, you guys are the gurus of digital communications at Best Friends. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you spending this hour with us. And I want to thank all of our attendees too, because it's challenging right now in animal welfare, and we certainly could not save them all without each and every one of you. So thank you very much for the hard work that you do day in and day out. And again, if you need anything, find me at team2025@bestfriends.org. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.